I get it, you're standing in the workshop, eyeing that sleek 2x2-foot CNC frame on a YouTube demo, wondering if it's the right gamble before you drop a few grand on a machine that might sit idle. You're not just looking for horsepower or a fancy control panel, you need to know whether the tool will actually fit the projects you have on your bench, how much space it will steal, and if the price point really delivers on the promises of professional scale. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started digging into the 22 CNC world, the first thing that tripped me up was the sheer variety of machines that claim big work area. Some are basically oversized hobby kits that still need a ton of tweaking, while others are industrial rigs that cost enough to make you double-check the ROI before you even think about buying. The Genmitsu PROVerXL sits in that middle ground, a genuinely large 22-inch square envelope that can swallow full-size plywood sheets, acrylic panels, and even small aluminum blanks, but it's packaged in a footprint that most serious hobbyists can still fit into a garage or a modest makerspace. Who should actually consider this machine? If you're a woodworker who's moved beyond the 12-inch router table and you've started cutting parts for furniture legs, decorative panels, or even custom inlays that demand a bit more surface, the extra work area will save you a lot of nesting headaches. The same goes for a small-scale sign maker or a prototype designer who needs to mill aluminum or brass prototypes without outsourcing. The closed-loop motion system, which Genmitsu touts as industrial-grade precision, really matters when you're trying to keep tolerances within a few thousandths of an inch, especially if you're making interlocking joints or gear teeth that have to mesh perfectly. On the flip side, if your projects are mostly 6-inch circles, simple keychains, or you're just getting started with hobby CNC and still learning the basics of code, the PROVerXL might feel like overkill. The machine size means you'll need a sturdy floor that can support the 710W spindle and the accompanying gantry without wobble, and the power draw is enough that a basic home circuit could trip if you're not careful. In short, it's a solid investment for anyone whose workflow already leans toward medium-sized production, but it's a heavy hand for the casual weekend tinkerer. Let's talk about the practical strengths. The first thing you notice after assembly, yes, there's a bit of assembly involved, but the instructions are clear enough that most people get the frame up within a few hours, is the rigidity of the frame. The aluminum extrusion is beefed up at the corners, and once you tighten the bolts, the whole thing feels rock solid, which is essential when you run the spindle at higher RPMs. The 710W spindle is a real workhorse. It can cut through inch MDF in a single pass and still hold enough torque to chip away at inch aluminum with the right bits. The dual collet system is another time saver. You can swap between inch and inch collets without pulling the whole spindle out, which is handy when you jump between wood and metal in the same day. The smart control part of the package is a touchscreen that runs GRBL-compatible firmware. I tried it with Fusion 360 post-processor, and the workflow was smooth, no mysterious firmware flashes. Just plug the USB, load the code, and you're ready. Because the machine is part of Genmitsu's creator ecosystem, you can add optional add-ons like a vacuum table, an automatic tool changer, or a laser module later on, which means the initial purchase can grow with your needs. That scalability is a real value add, especially when you compare it to a fixed-function CNC that forces you to buy a whole new machine when you outgrow it. Now, for the weaknesses that only show up after you start using the thing day to day. The first is the dust management. The spindle pulls in a decent amount of chips, and while there's a basic dust shoe, it isn't a sealed enclosure. If you're cutting hardwoods or composite boards, you'll find a fine cloud of dust lingering around the work area, which means you'll need a separate shop vacuum or an aftermarket enclosure to keep the air clean. Second, the machine size makes it a bit of a logistical headache if you have limited workshop space. You need at least a 4x5 foot clear zone to run it safely, and the gantry's travel limits mean you have to think ahead about material placement. There's no auto center feature, so you'll be spending a few extra minutes aligning the stock before each run. Another point that can bite you is the software learning curve. While the touchscreen UI is intuitive for basic jobs, advanced users often migrate to a desktop controller like Mach 3 or Linux CNC for more complex toolpaths. The transition isn't difficult, but you'll need to spend some time configuring the motion parameters to get the full benefit of the closed-loop system. If you're hoping for a plug-and-play experience that never requires a